The day Lena received the official letter was the day her life changed in a direction she never expected. She was sitting in her small workshop, tightening the last bolt of an old motorcycle engine, when the mail carrier arrived with a white envelope stamped with a government seal. Lena wiped her hands on a cloth and opened it with calm curiosity. She was a simple mechanic, known in the town for her quiet nature and strong work ethic, so official letters were rare for her. The letter informed her that Master Ron, a retired veteran pilot who had lived on the edge of town, had left her his hangar and everything inside it. There was no message from the family, no explanation, only a legal notice declaring she was now the owner of a place many residents considered abandoned and useless. Lena read the document twice to make sure she understood correctly. She had only met Master Ron once, yet he had trusted her with such a responsibility. Curiosity and respect pushed her to visit the place the same afternoon. The hangar stood at the far end of an old runway, surrounded by fields of tall grass. As Lena approached, the building looked tired. The metal walls were dull and streaked with dust. The gate leaned slightly to one side, as if it shared the exhaustion of the structure. Some children played near the fence and paused to watch her. They whispered to each other as she walked by. She heard one child say that only a foolish person would take over such a broken place. She placed her hand on the cool metal of the gate and pushed. It gave a long creak that echoed through the empty area. Inside, sunlight streamed through gaps in the panels, painting bright stripes across the concrete floor. The air smelled of rust, oil, and old memories. Piles of aircraft parts lay everywhere. Some were stacked neatly while others were half buried under dust. A few abandoned crates sat in one corner. Tools, cables, and metal scraps covered several workbenches. Lena stepped in slowly. Her boots disturbed a thin layer of dust that floated gently in the air. She walked deeper into the hangar, taking in each detail with growing interest. It did not look like a useless place to her. It looked like a workshop with stories. Every bolt, every scrap, every tool carried the touch of someone who had once worked with purpose. She remembered the day she met Master Ron. He had brought an old engine to her shop, a machine that no one else wanted to repair. People thought he was too old to fly and that his engine was too ancient to be worth the effort, but he spoke to her with respect and trust. She fixed his engine with care, and he had watched her silently, appreciating her attention to detail. When she finished, he had thanked her in a warm voice and said she had hands that listened to machines. Lena never forgot that comment, even though she had never seen him again. Her eyes landed on something unusual in the corner. A long wooden box sat alone on a small platform, standing out among the scattered parts. Its surface looked cleaner than the rest of the hangar, as if someone had taken care to protect it. A folded note rested on top with her name written in firm handwriting. She picked up the note. The paper felt slightly worn but preserved. She unfolded it carefully and read the message. Master Ron had written that he wanted her to continue something he had started. He wrote that the hangar was not as empty as it seemed and that she would discover its purpose when the time was right. He wrote that he chose her because she valued honest work, not recognition. His handwriting was steady and confident, carrying the weight of someone who had lived a long and experienced life. Lena placed the letter in her pocket and lifted the lid of the wooden box. Inside was a set of tools. They were old but crafted with extraordinary skill. A wrench with engravings, a hammer with a smooth wooden handle, screwdrivers with perfectly shaped grips. These were not ordinary tools. They were the tools of someone who respected the craft deeply. She ran her fingers over them, sensing the care behind their creation. She wondered why he had kept them preserved while the rest of the hangar fell into disorder. She also wondered why he had chosen her instead of someone from his own circle or someone with a high reputation. But she did not doubt his intention. She simply accepted the task with quiet determination that she continued exploring. She noticed marks on the floor indicating that something large had once been positioned there. The shape looked like the outline of an aircraft frame. She followed the faint markings with growing curiosity. It became clear that Master Ron had been working on something important before time forced him to stop. The thought filled her with a soft sense of responsibility. Outside, the sound of murmuring voices reached her. Some neighbors had gathered near the gate, watching her every move. She recognized a few of them. They were people who often doubted her skills because she was a woman in a field dominated by men. She heard someone say that she must be out of her mind to take over a forgotten hangar. Another voice said she would probably turn the place into a pile of scrap within a week. Their words were meant to mock her, but she remained calm. She did not let their opinions settle in her heart. Instead, she walked back to the center of the hangar and examined the tools again. The sunlight fell on them in a gentle line. She felt something awaken inside her, a sense of purpose, a sense of promise. She knew the hangar had value even if others could not see it. She spent the next few hours cleaning a small section near the door. She cleared dust, moved broken parts aside, and opened old drawers. Many items were damaged beyond repair, but some still had life left in them. Lena worked with patience, not rushing or forcing anything. The more she cleaned, the more she understood the silence of the hangar. It was not dead. It was waiting. By the time the sun approached the horizon, the noisy group outside had grown bored and left. The hangar was quiet once more. Lena stood in the open space she had cleared and looked around at the rows of parts and tools. She imagined Master Ron standing there years ago, planning his next creation. She imagined the sound of engines and the smell of fresh metal. Lena closed the hangar gate and rested a moment, taking in the peaceful air. A sense of commitment settled deep within her. She promised herself she would restore the hangar, not for the approval of the town, not for recognition. She would restore it because someone who understood her craft had trusted her. Someone had seen her potential when others only saw limitations. She walked away with steady steps. The key to the hangar hung from her hand, swinging gently as the last rays of sunlight touched the old metal walls. Tomorrow, she would return. Tomorrow, she would begin the real work. And tomorrow, the hangar would no longer be a forgotten place. It would become a part of her story and the final chapter of a veteran's unfinished dream. The morning after Lena first explored the hangar, she woke before the sun. Her mind had been restless all night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the wooden box with the special tools and the faint outline of an aircraft on the floor. Something inside her kept pulling her back to the hangar, as if the place had been waiting for her return. She prepared a small breakfast, tied her hair, grabbed her toolbox and walked toward the old runway with determined steps. Mist floated above the field as she approached. The rising sun cast a warm glow on the hangar's metal walls, making it look less tired and more hopeful than it had the day before. Lena unlocked the gate and pushed it open. The sound echoed again, but this time it felt more welcoming. She took a deep breath and stepped inside with purpose. Her first task was to clear more space. She swept the dusty floor, moved broken crates outside, and sorted the scattered tools into piles. She worked steadily, humming a soft tune under her breath. As she cleaned, she uncovered more signs that Master Ron had been preparing something important. She found neatly labeled boxes of bolts, spare wires, and old blueprints tucked under a shelf. Each label was written in the same strong handwriting she had seen on the letter. Lena opened the blueprints carefully and spread them on the workbench. Her eyes widened as she studied the designs. They showed a lightweight training aircraft. It was smaller than a typical plane, but the structure looked strong and efficient. The wings had a unique shape, meant to reduce air resistance. The cockpit was simple, roomy, and safe for beginners. The aircraft was designed to glide smoothly even at lower speeds. Lena traced the lines on the paper with her fingertip. She felt her respect for Master Ron deepen. He had been planning something meaningful. She continued going through the hangar, and soon located the real parts that matched the blueprints. The frame of the aircraft lay in pieces across the floor. The wings were resting against the back wall. The tail section was hidden behind a stack of old barrels. She went from piece to piece, inspecting each one, testing its weight and checking its condition. As she lifted one of the wing panels, the hangar door rattled suddenly. Lena turned and saw 3 men from the town standing outside. They leaned on the fence, watching her with smirks on their faces. The one at the front was Raffi, known for speaking louder than necessary and always finding joy in mocking others. He shouted across the open gate, asking if she planned to build a flying box out of junk. His companions laughed at the remark. Lena did not respond. She picked up her toolbox and continued sorting the parts. She knew people like Raffi enjoyed reactions, and she refused to give him that satisfaction. Her silence annoyed him even more. He raised his voice again, calling the hangar a useless graveyard and saying she would waste years trying to fix what was beyond saving. His words echoed through the open area. But Lena had a different kind of strength. She kept her head down and worked. Her fingers moved with careful precision. Her heart listened only to the promise she had made to Master Ron. After a while, the men grew bored of trying to get her attention and walked away. When peace returned, she explored the hangar more thoroughly. Under an old tarp, she found a metal chest with a heavy lock. She hesitated for a moment, but then remembered she was now the rightful owner of everything inside the hangar. She searched for a key and eventually found it in a drawer near the back wall. The chest opened with a soft click. Inside the chest were more items from Master Ron's past. Manuals, notes, pictures of him standing next to different aircraft, and a thick notebook filled with his handwriting. Lena opened the notebook at random and read a few lines. She discovered that Master Ron had been working on this aircraft for years. His notes described his goal to create a craft that young students could learn on without fear. His words expressed care, hope, and dedication. He had believed that giving someone the chance to fly could change their life. Lena closed the notebook and placed it beside the blueprints. She felt honored to hold the dreams of a veteran in her hands. She decided she would rebuild the aircraft. No matter how long it took, she would give it the life he wanted it to have. She spent several hours cleaning the frame parts. She removed rust using a wire brush. She wiped every section with oil. She checked each bolt hole to ensure it was strong enough to support the structure. The tools from the wooden box worked perfectly. They felt comfortable in her hands, as if they had been waiting for her daughter as she worked. She also noticed something interesting. The parts were not randomly scattered. They were arranged with intention. It was as if Master Ron had prepared everything in the order someone would need to rebuild the aircraft. Each wing panel had markings. Several pipes had tags. The cables were tied neatly. A faint path on the floor seemed to guide her from one station to the next. Lena followed the path and reached the shadowy corner of the hangar, where dust had settled thicker than anywhere else. There she found another box. This one was much smaller, made of metal and locked with a simple latch. She opened it and saw a wooden badge carved into the shape of wings. It was polished and elegant, with the initials of Master Ron engraved on the back. Under the badge was another short letter. In it, Master Ron wrote that the aircraft was special to him because it represented a promise he once made. He wrote that if anyone found this letter, they should continue the project only if they believed in it. He trusted that the right person would come at the right time. Lena held the badge with soft hands. She felt a connection to the man she barely knew. She stood up and scanned the hangar with a new sense of belonging. The place no longer felt like a forgotten building. It felt like a mentor waiting to teach her. She spent the rest of the day organizing the space systematically. She sorted tools by size. She arranged metal sheets by shape. She moved the aircraft parts into the center of the hangar so she could easily reach them during assembly. As afternoon turned to evening, the sun cast warm colors through the side windows. The hangar glowed softly. Lena stepped outside for fresh air. The wind carried the scent of grass and old soil. The runway behind the hangar stretched far into the distance. Cracked but still usable, she walked along the runway, imagining how the aircraft would look once completed. She imagined its wings catching the wind and lifting gently into the sky. She imagined Master Ron standing beside her with pride in his eyes. The thought filled her chest with a warm and steady determination. When Lena returned to the hangar, she locked the gate and looked at the place one more time before leaving. It looked less like a pile of forgotten metal and more like a dream being reborn. She tucked the badge and both letters into her bag and walked home with quiet confidence. The town might mock her, the work might take months, but she felt ready. She would honor the wish of the veteran who trusted her. She would rebuild the aircraft. She would give life to the hidden project that had slept in the hangar for years, and she would do it with steady hands, patient steps, and a heart full of purpose. The next morning arrived with a soft breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass. Lena woke with renewed determination. She packed her tools, grabbed a notebook, and walked straight toward the hangar. Each step felt steady, as if the ground itself understood her purpose. The sky above her was bright, and the sunlight made the old metal structure glow faintly in the distance. When she reached the hangar, she paused to study the building. Yes, the walls were worn and the roof had patches, but she no longer saw a forgotten place. She saw a workshop ready to rise again. She unlocked the gate and entered the wide space. The air inside was cool and faintly smelled of oil and metal. Lena smiled softly and began her work. Her first goal of the day was to examine each major component of the aircraft. She set the blueprints on a clean workbench and studied every detail again. She traced the lines with her fingers and made notes in her own notebook. She checked the length of the wing panels, compared bolt measurements, and inspected the tail section. She wanted to understand exactly what Master Ron had planned. While she worked, she heard footsteps approaching the gate. She turned and saw two teenagers standing outside. They were curious and shy. They had seen her working here yesterday and continued whispering among themselves. One of them asked if she was really trying to build a plane. Lena nodded and told them she was rebuilding something that mattered to someone who had served the country. The teenagers stared in admiration. They asked if planes were difficult to build. Lena explained with simple words that building was not easy, but it was possible with patience, knowledge, and respect for the craft. The teens listened with interest before they finally ran off, promising to return later to check on her progress. Their enthusiasm warmed her. It was the opposite of the mocking voices she had heard the previous days. Their curiosity reminded her that hope often began in small places. She continued examining the aircraft parts. She laid the central frame on a flat surface and began cleaning it carefully. She used sandpaper to remove small patches of rust and checked each connecting point. The frame was old but strong. Master Ron had chosen durable materials. She could sense that he had built it with love and experience. As she inspected the central spine of the aircraft, she discovered several markings etched into the metal. They were small lines, symbols, and notes carved by hand. One marking indicated balance points. Another showed where extra support was needed. These markings were not part of any manual. They came from years of skill. Lena touched them gently, as if greeting the invisible guidance of someone no longer alive. Behind the main tool rack, she found a cracked wooden cabinet. She opened it and discovered piles of notebooks. Some were filled with maintenance records. Others had diagrams of engines. Several notebooks contained personal reflections of Master Ron. Lena picked one that looked older and opened it carefully. On the first page, she read a message that seemed written directly for whoever would continue his work. Master Ron wrote about the day he first dreamed of teaching young pilots. He wrote that flying gave him strength during difficult times, and he wished to pass that strength to new generations. He hoped the aircraft he designed would one day help someone learn to trust themselves again. Lena read every word slowly. She felt the sincerity and quiet wisdom of the veteran in each line. Further in the notebook, she found a drawing of a young pilot smiling proudly in front of a plane. A caption under the sketch said "Future Student." The expression on the drawing was full of hope. Lena closed the notebook and held it close to her chest for a moment. She respected the man more with each discovery dot to understand the engine status. She pulled a top off a large object in the corner. Under it was an engine stand holding a partially restored engine. She circled the machine, noting the condition of each component. The casing was old but solid. Several wires needed replacement. The fuel pump required adjustment. The spark plugs needed cleaning or changing entirely. She took a deep breath and began dismantling the engine piece by piece. She placed each part on a cloth, arranged in the exact order she removed it. Cleaning each item took time. She wiped off grease, filed rough edges, and scrubbed buildup from metal surfaces. The tools from the wooden box fit perfectly into the bolts and screws, nearly as if they had been crafted for this engine alone. Midday arrived, and Lena stepped outside for a moment to rest. She sat on a large stone near the runway and watched a group of townspeople passing by. Some ignored her. Some glanced at the hangar with disapproval. Two elderly men shook their heads, saying she was wasting her time. Their voices carried across the open space, but Lena refused to let discouragement settle in her heart. She reminded herself that progress often looked useless to those who did not understand the goal. After finishing a short break, she returned inside and continued rebuilding the engine. Her hands moved with calm certainty. She replaced worn cables, polished important components, and checked alignment points. Hours passed quietly as the hangar echoed with the sound of metal, tools, and determination. When she finally finished the cleaning stage, she placed the parts neatly on the workbench and stretched her arms. The engine was still far from complete, but she could already see its strength returning. She knew it would run again. While organizing the shelves near the back wall, she found a rusted metal box with an unusual lock. The lock was shaped like a star. She searched the drawers and found a small key attached to a tag with the word "keep." She used the key and opened the box. Inside was a folded cloth. She lifted it and revealed a small device with switches and wires. It looked like a communication recorder. She pressed a button out of curiosity. The device hummed softly, and a voice filled the hangar. The voice was calm and steady. Lena recognized it instantly. It was Master Ron. His recorded message said that if someone was listening, then he trusted them to continue his last project. He said the aircraft was more than a machine. It was the last piece of his dream. The dream to help a new generation learn courage. He spoke of the reason he chose to leave the hangar to someone outside his family. He said he wanted to give this project to someone who understood the language of tools, someone whose hands showed respect for every bolt and every gear. He believed that this person would be rare but real. Lena stood still, listening to his gentle voice. Her heart felt full. The message ended with a simple line. He said he wished the aircraft would touch the sky one day. Lena placed the recorder back in the box with great care. She understood her responsibility more deeply now. This was not only a repair job, it was a promise. As the sun lowered, she swept the floor and locked the tools neatly in place. She looked around the hangar. It no longer felt lonely. It felt guided. It felt alive with the presence of the man who had built so much here. She locked the hangar and walked home as the sky turned orange. Her steps were slow but peaceful. She knew she had a long journey ahead. She also knew she had the strength to complete it because she was no longer building a machine. She was carrying forward a dream that had waited for her with patience and trust. Myra woke early the next morning with a feeling of new energy in her heart. The sun climbed through thin clouds and warmed the metal roof of the hangar. It was the first time in months that she did not feel the weight of fear holding her down. She had proven to the town that she was a real mechanic. She had repaired the old transport plane. She had shown skill, and she had shown respect for the veteran, who had loved this place. But the journey was far from over. The hangar stood quiet when she stepped outside. The cold morning breeze carried a light smell of oil and dust. Myra wiped her hands on her pants and walked toward the entrance. Today she needed to begin the full restoration of the veteran's prized aircraft. People were watching her now. Some supported her, some doubted her, and others simply waited to see what she would do next. She pushed open the hangar door and walked inside. The interior looked peaceful. Tools hung neatly on the wall. The veteran's notebooks rested on the workbench, their pages filled with his careful handwriting. The plane stood in the center like a giant resting bird. It was old and worn, but Myra could feel its spirit. She ran her fingers along the metal body and whispered that she would not let it be forgotten. That as she prepared her tools, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Rian standing in the doorway. Rian was one of the few locals who had spoken kindly to her since she arrived. He was calm, steady, and always willing to help when she needed an extra pair of hands. He gave her a small smile and said that he had brought her breakfast because he guessed she had not eaten yet. Myra laughed softly. She had forgotten about food completely. She accepted the meal and thanked him. While eating, she asked why he had always treated her with respect even when the others mocked her. Rian shrugged and said that he had once been underestimated too. People had looked at him and thought he would fail. He knew the feeling of proving himself to a crowd that did not believe in him. Myra nodded with understanding. Having someone who understood her journey made her feel less alone. After breakfast, they both began working on the plane. Myra removed the old engine panels while Rian cleaned the workspace. She explained that they were going to check the inner frame, fix the damaged wiring, and restore the hydraulic system. Rian listened carefully and followed her instructions. Hours passed. The sound of clanking tools echoed in the hangar. Myra focused fully on the machine in front of her. She felt connected to it, as if the veteran's spirit guided her hands. Every bolt she loosened and every piece she replaced brought her closer to honoring his wish. By noon, several members of the town walked in. Myra paused and wiped the sweat from her forehead. Her stomach tightened with worry. She wondered if they were here to mock her again. Instead, they watched her silently. One of them, an older woman who had doubted Myra from the first day, stepped closer. She studied Myra's work and spoke in a low voice. She said she had not expected Myra to continue working after the first attempt. Most people would have walked away. Most would have given up when the town laughed at them. She admitted that maybe they had judged Myra too quickly. Myra was surprised. The apology was small but honest. She thanked the woman and made it clear that she never wanted to take anything from the town. She only wanted to keep the veteran's dream alive. More people entered the hangar. Some offered advice. Some simply watched. Others brought tools or small items that might help. The atmosphere changed from cold to warm. Myra could feel the shift. The town that once rejected her was beginning to recognize her dedication. By late afternoon, she and Rian had repaired part of the inner frame and inspected the engine mount. Suddenly, the hangar door swung open again, but this time the expression on the newcomer's face was different. It was the servant from the house where the veteran had lived. He looked worried. He held a small box in his hands and said that he had found something important among the veteran's belongings. He explained that the veteran had asked him to give it to Myra only when the time felt right. The servant believed that moment had arrived. Myra stared at the small box. Her heart pounded. She stepped forward and took it carefully. When she opened it, she found a folded letter and a simple metal key. The key was old but strong. The letter carried the veteran's handwriting. Myra read the letter slowly. The veteran wrote that he had seen her passion for machines long before she arrived. He had watched her repairing small engines in her childhood, and he had known she would grow into a gifted mechanic. He wrote that this hangar was meant to be hers because she had the heart to continue what he started. The key belonged to a locked wooden cabinet hidden behind the tool racks. The cabinet contained designs and unfinished projects that the veteran had never shared with anyone. He believed Myra would know what to do with them. When she finished reading, Myra's eyes filled with emotion. The letter was more than a message. It was trust. It was belief. It was the veteran's way of telling her she was ready. The townspeople watched quietly. For the first time, they saw the bond between Myra and the man they had respected for years. They finally understood why he had left the hangar to her. He had not acted out of chance. He had chosen with purpose. Myra walked to the back of the hangar and found the cabinet. She inserted the key, turned it, and opened the door. Inside were stacks of blueprints, sketches, and notes. Some showed new plane models. Others showed improvements to old engine systems. There were also photographs of the veteran during his service. Each item carried a part of his soul. Myra touched the blueprints gently. She felt a wave of determination. She wanted to finish what the veteran had begun. She wanted the hangar to be a place of life, innovation, and respect. She turned to the crowd and announced that she would restore the veteran's plane completely, not only for herself but for the town, for the memory of the man who had trusted her, and for the dream he hoped she would carry forward. The crowd nodded with approval. As the sun began to set, Myra decided to take a short walk outside to clear her mind. Rian joined her. They stood together at the edge of the airstrip and looked at the horizon glowing with soft evening colors. Rian told her that she had changed something in the town, that people were beginning to see her as one of their own. Myra smiled. She did not need praise, but knowing she was no longer alone meant everything to her. When they returned to the hangar, Myra locked the cabinet and placed the key around her neck. She felt stronger. She felt ready. Tomorrow she would begin the most difficult part of the restoration. But she was not afraid. She had the veteran's guidance, the town's growing support, and her own unbroken spirit. She whispered a promise to the plane. Resting in the center of the hangar, she would bring it back to life. The next morning arrived with a calm golden light spreading across the hangar floor. Myra unlocked the door and stepped inside, holding the key that the veteran had left for her. It rested around her neck and felt warm, as if it carried the strength of the man who had trusted her so deeply. Today she planned to finish the restoration of the old aircraft. It would be the final step in honoring his last wish. The hangar was quiet, but it did not feel lonely anymore. The plane stood tall in the center, surrounded by tools, wires, new metal plates, and the blueprints she had taken from the cabinet. Myra breathed in slowly and began her work. She checked the wiring system again, tightened every bolt she had replaced, and polished the metal structure until it shined like silver in the morning light. As she worked, she remembered the veteran's stories in his notebooks. Stories about long flights, dangerous weather, and brave rescues. Stories about friends he had lost and people he had helped. She knew he had loved this aircraft with his whole heart. That love now passed to her while Myra focused on the engine mount. She heard footsteps outside. Rian walked in, holding 2 mugs of warm tea. He set one down for her and smiled. He told her that half the town was talking about her again, but this time they spoke with admiration. Yesterday's doubts had begun to fade. People who once mocked her were now telling others about her skill and determination. Myra thanked him but kept her attention on her work. She felt grateful, but she did not want praise. She wanted to finish what she had started. Soon, other locals joined them. They brought small tools, cloths for cleaning, and snacks to keep everyone energized. Children peeked through the doorway, curious to see the plane they had only heard about. Some older residents whispered memories of the veteran, describing his calm nature and steady hands. Everyone seemed to understand that something important was happening inside the hangar. By noon, Myra had completed the internal systems. She stepped back and studied the aircraft thoughtfully. The outer body still needed paint, and the wheels required testing, but the structure itself was ready for a trial run. The idea made her heart beat faster. The veteran's aircraft had not moved in years. Bringing it back to life felt unreal. Ryan suggested they roll the plane outside to test the engine. Mira agreed. Together with a group of townspeople, they pushed the aircraft toward the open hangar doors. The wheels moved smoothly across the floor, a sign that their repairs had held strong. The plane glided out into the sunlight. The breeze carried the scent of fresh grass from the field beyond the runway. The townspeople stood around in a half circle, waiting with curious eyes. Every face reflected hope. Myra climbed into the cockpit. Her hands rested firmly on the controls. The interior smelled of old leather mixed with fresh oil. She checked every meter, every button, every switch. Ryan stood near the wing and gave her a thumbs up. She turned the ignition. Silence filled the air. For a moment she feared the engine would not start, but then a soft rumble shook the plane. The sound grew louder, stronger, deeper. The engine roared to life with fresh power. The crowd gasped. Myra felt tears form in her eyes. The machine that the veteran had loved was breathing again. She let the engine idle for several minutes. The wings vibrated gently. The whole aircraft hummed with new energy. The townspeople clapped and cheered. The older residents wiped their eyes. After shutting off the engine, Mira climbed down. A small girl from the crowd stepped forward and handed her a flower. The child thanked her for fixing the veteran's plane because she remembered how he used to wave at everyone from the cockpit. Mira knelt down and hugged the child gently. Next, Mira decided to finish the cosmetic work. With the help of others, she repainted the aircraft. They chose the same colors the veteran had used years ago based on the old photographs she found in the cabinet. The town worked together, laughing and sharing stories as they restored the final parts. Even people who once doubted her joined the effort without hesitation. As the sun dipped low, the aircraft looked completely renewed. The hangar lights came on, spreading a warm glow across its polished body. Mira stood back and felt a mixture of exhaustion and pride. One of the older townsmen stepped closer. He held a folded flag that once belonged to the veteran. He told Mira that the town wanted her to have it. She shook her head at first and said it belonged to everyone. But the townsman insisted. He explained that the veteran had trusted her to carry his legacy, and now the town trusted her to. Mira accepted the flag with deep gratitude and promised to hang it in the hangar as a sign of respect. That evening, they held a small gathering outside. Tables were set up with warm food, lanterns, and soft music. People talked, laughed, and admired the plane resting proudly near the hangar entrance. Children ran around it, pretending to be pilots. Myra watched them with a gentle smile. Ryan sat beside her and asked how she felt. Myra replied that she felt like she had finally found her place. She no longer felt like an outsider. She felt part of something meaningful. Ryan nodded and told her that the veteran would be proud of her. As night settled in, Myra slipped back into the quiet hangar. She wanted a moment alone with the plane. She walked toward it and placed her hand on its cool metal surface. She whispered a promise to the veteran. She promised she would keep this hangar alive. She promised she would help young people learn about mechanics. She promised she would continue his dream and build a future where skill and passion mattered more than doubts and insults. She then opened the cabinet with the veteran's blueprints. She spread them out on the table and studied them. There were designs for a small training aircraft, a set of tools he had planned to invent, and a plan for turning the hangar into a learning space. Myra smiled. She already had new ideas forming in her mind. She felt inspired. Hours later, when the gathering outside finally quieted, Ryan walked back into the hangar. He found Mira still studying the blueprints. He told her that the town wanted her to give a small speech before everyone went home. Myra felt nervous but agreed. She stepped outside and stood on a wooden crate so everyone could see her. The crowd fell silent. The lanterns flickered softly, lighting her face. Mira thanked everyone for believing in her. She thanked them for helping her restore the aircraft. She reminded them of the veterans' kindness and dedication. She told them that the hangar would now be a place where people could learn, repair, build, and dream. She promised that no one would ever be judged unfairly inside its doors. The crowd applauded warmly. Some clapped, some cheered, some simply smiled with pride. When the gathering ended, Myra watched the townspeople walk home under the stars. The night air was cool and peaceful. Ryan stood beside her and said that the hangar had a new beginning now. Mira looked at the aircraft one last time before locking the doors. The machine that once stood silent and forgotten now represented hope, unity, and respect. She whispered a final thanks to the veteran in her heart. His last wish had not only brought the plane back to life, it had brought the entire town together, and it had given Myra a home.